One thing I will tell people when they're going through grief is allow yourself to think whatever you want to think. If you're angry with them, if you feel guilty, if you're confused, if you're indifferent, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Grief Uncensored. I'm Yako.
And I'm Julia. We believe that your grief is your own and no one can tell you what to do with it, but we're glad you're here and that you found us. So, welcome to Grief Uncensored. Be sure to follow us on all of our platforms Instagram, where we do a Feature Your Loved One series, and we have a great community over there. We also have a Twitter, a TikTok, and also a Facebook group for only people grieving in their 20s.
And the link to all of that is in our Instagram bio. And Instagram is our most active platform. So if you want to message us, that's probably the best place for you to do that to get the quickest response.
Definitely. So this week on the podcast, we have another guest. We're talking to Zane Landin. He is the founder of Positive Vibes Magazine, which is a digital magazine dedicated to telling authentic stories about mental health, wellness, and inspiration. Zane has been featured on over 30 platforms like Seek the Joy podcast, Forbes, and Coming from the Heart podcast. He has his own story to share with us today about grief and how he's managed this in today's world. So, welcome, Zane.
Yeah, let's welcome Zane.
Woo!
All right. Hello.
So, welcome, Zane.
Hey everyone, how's it going?
We're so honestly so glad to have you come on. We know we've been getting your messages for a while, so we were like, we really need to get this guy on. But we love that you wanted to come on and share your story with us. And we're just grateful that you took the time to be with us today. So thank you so much.
Oh, of course. Well, thank you for having me.
So we'll just dive right into it. And if you want to go ahead and share your story, we'd love to hear it.
Absolutely. Well, my name is Zane Landin. I'm 24. I am here in California. I write for different publications. I have my own digital magazine about mental health. I've always been impacted by mental health from a very young age, and still today, because it never goes away. Same with grief. And that's kind of like mainly what I'm about, what I'm always advocating for. And so my grieving journey kind of became recently in a way. I don't know what that means actually, what recently means, but for me, it was January of 2021. It was either January 5th or January 6th for my mom, Tamar Landon. She had a history of, well, a plethora of health issues, and she was always a warrior in her body. Something I never got to tell her, but she went through a lot of surgeries, a lot of different health problems, and came out stronger every time. And she beat cancer. So growing up, I always thought she was like an invisible warrior, kind of capable of beating
Mm,
anything. I still
mm,
think that because that's just how I think.
yeah.
So I think I will just say that when it first happened, I was definitely in denial because I kind of grew up with my mom having this emotional shield or like this armor she always wore that she was able to kind of survive anything. So it was a shock, and at first I didn't believe it. So when it was January 5th, January 6th, she had a history of hernias. She was having stomach pains from it, and she decided to go to urgent care because it was not getting any better. I don't think the family or us, I don't want to say my family, I didn't take it seriously because I was always used to my mom kind of experiencing that. So I was like, here we go. I hope this is end soon because I don't want her to be in pain anymore. I'm tired of these hernias. I'm really hoping that she can get over them.
Hmm.
Uh, so I remember her leaving. She didn't really say much. I stayed behind to my sister, and then my dad took her, of course. And yeah, that was it. And then I texted her and like see how she was doing. She said she hasn't gone to surgery yet. She said she was a little worried, and I told her just to don't worry about it, don't think about it. And even the night before she went to the hospital, she was worried about the hernia, and I said, "Don't worry, everything's gonna be fine. Don't worry about anything else." So I think she was worried about other things, like maybe stuff in general about her health. And I was like, "Don't worry about it. Just worry
Hmm.
about the hernia right now. Just put all your energy and focus on how we can get over that, which is hard." So since I'm not in her shoes to know what she's feeling. All
Hmm.
right, so then my dad comes back, and then he came back and he informed me and my sister that the words definitely uh it really hurts, but he said that she was having trouble waking up. My sister at first was pretty emotional. I'm not speaking for them, but I just want to tell the whole story on what I
Mm-hmm,
saw.
mm-hmm,
I'm not speaking for them or what they think. But my sister was, emotional. I wasn't because I was like, oh, okay, well, she's gonna wake up. Really, I mean, I think it's interesting how people are gonna react to it, and I think my reaction was really normal. It may not feel like that to some people because hearing that, they're like, whoa, you might start freaking out about that
Mhm.
because that sounds really serious. But for me, I was just kind of like, no, I don't see it. Like, I don't see how that's
mm-hmm,
possible. I don't think it was denial. I was just like, it was hard for me to cross that boundary and know the truth that that was happening
mm-hmm,
because, like I said, I've always known my mom to be this kind of person. So I was like, okay, okay, she'll be fine. She'll wake up. And I kind of kept telling myself that. And I'm not really telling the whole story, but during the surgery, so apparently she experienced a heart attack during the surgery, which is if you know that can happen. That's why some people are kind of encouraged to not go through surgery if they really don't need to, because their heart might not be able to take it. And the unfortunate thing is my mom was always had this deep fear of anesthesia because there were times in her history where she would try to come out of anesthesia surgeries and she would have a hard time waking up. Not fully, but she would just like kind of almost be still and they would have to like really work her body to get her up, which I think is really scary.
Yeah.
So that yeah, so she was always kind of scared of that and unfortunately that happened. And so she kind of didn't wake up and my dad saw her after he told us. I was again not really believing it and he went back and he saw her kind of hooked up to a bunch of machines. I think that they let him see her because she was in ICU. And at the time, this was 2021 COVID. I don't think there was vaccines at the time. So it
mm-hmm,
was very hard to kind of get in and see her because almost everyone in the ICU had COVID. And so, as you know, there were times where people couldn't see their families who had COVID in the ICU or
mm-hmm,
whatever was going on. So fortunately, he got to see her. And I think that they let him see her because they knew of the inevitable. And miracles happen all the time, but I think doctors kind of know when something's going to happen like that.
Yeah.
So he did see her, and I'm grateful I didn't see her like that. I don't want to. I still don't want to. Even if
mm-hmm.
she was kind of alive in that moment, actually, maybe I would, but still, I don't know. There's like a dilemma there. Like
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
you want to be there because they're potentially still kind of alive in a way, but you don't want to see them in that state.
Mm-hmm,
Right.
But I still would have gone if I really had the chance. But I think they just let my dad do it.
mm-hmm,
So, like I said, I wasn't thinking anything of it until it was like at 2 or 3 in the morning. I remember calling my partner just like in tears. I don't know where it came from. Like sometimes it kind of just hits you
Yeah.
in the most unexpected moment, like at 3 in the morning. And I called my partner, and of course he was like sleeping. So it was a weird time. But yeah, I was just crying and crying. I don't cry. And that's not because I have a hard time being vulnerable. No, I actually really try my best to be vulnerable and allow others to be, but I just don't cry. Usually I'll cry to
mm-hmm,
music or something that's nostalgic, even
Mhm.
mm-hmm.
things I think about my mom now. But before I didn't cry as much. Like I said, only to music. And when I say music, I mean like a lot. So I would cry a lot to music. But without it, I usually wouldn't.
Yeah, I
Unless it was a
get what
really
you mean. Like sometimes you like watch like a sad movie just to like cry or like feel something, but you don't want to like cry. Like you need that to like let out the tears sometimes. I don't know.
yeah, no, definitely.
Totally.
And then so called him in tears and he just told me not to worry about it. I remember even attending there was a program I wanted to go to for graduate school at Columbia for strategic communications and like they had like a session and since it's Eastern time, I attended like at 4 in the morning. And I
Oh
was
my
like, okay, I'm
God.
not gonna be able to fall asleep. I'm just gonna attend this just to get my mind off of things and because I'm still interested in this program. I ended up falling asleep halfway through it. And so I did wake up and this is where it gets really weird. Not weird in a bad way, but I felt like a weird sensation, like of chills, like the chills you get when you are sick. Like you get the chills when you have a fever. You know what I'm talking about, where you're actually
Mm-hmm,
physically shaking. I don't get those. And some people could say, you were just overwhelmed. No, I don't think I was because I was not having chills the night before. Don't know where they came from. It was really weird. And I really think that, in my opinion, that's where I think my mom's spirit kind of passed me, right? I think past me, whatever happens, I don't know what happens. But inside me, was
mm-hmm,
around me, was the aura, was the room,
mm-hmm.
angel, ghost, I don't know. I'm not gonna know till we get to that. But it was something like that. And I got these
Wow.
shows and I was like, kind of just knew, don't I? I kind of knew. And so I don't remember what time it was, but I woke up and my dad said, oh, can you come out in the living room? And I was like, I already know. I don't want to do this. And
Yeah.
so
Mm.
sat there. My sister and my neighbor were there, and they were crying. I was like, you're not making this any more or less obvious. No, I'm just kidding. That was like, it was just kind of horrible. I was like, no, I don't want to do this. And because I already knew.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it was like, I really wanted to avoid it because I didn't want to hear it. But when my dad said that, she passed away in her sleep. And we were all there, and my sister and, like I said, my neighbor were crying, but I was just like, again, in disbelief. Because again, before I kind of had that little breakdown like in the morning though. But then at that point, I was like, no, there's no way. I just did not feel any different, which I think is interesting. But again, I think we can get into this later. But the thing with grief is like it's really like a weird process, and it's never
Mhm.
a linear process. It's not you're gonna go through the denial stage, the acceptance stage. No, 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 no. You're gonna go all around. I mean, you
Mhm.
could
Mhm.
even go through grief and years later you're still in denial. Or maybe you do accept
Yeah.
that they're gone and then all of a sudden
You're
you're in
back in
denial
denial.
again. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah,
it's a linear. I think it's like this circle and it's not even a
totally.
circle. What is it? It's a random path. You're
It's
going
just
through
like a roller coaster that
yeah,
like doesn't have an end.
yeah,
Like, I don't know. I have that feeling too. I feel that a lot of times I'm like, oh, this week like I'm not in the denial stage, but maybe next week like I'm just back in the denial stage, Like I'll have days where I'm like so shocked that my mom's not here, but then I'll
Mhm.
have another day where like I'm like, okay, like I'm fully accepted this. Like, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know what I'm gonna get.
absolutely.
Literally.
And yeah, it's interesting. And sometimes it makes sense. Like maybe um it's a special occasion, Christmas or a birthday. Then sometimes it's completely random, and that's interesting.
Right.
Um, So I will say we are fortunate because they did test my mom and she did not have COVID, which is great because then we actually were able to see her. So they let us go in the ICU and see her, and like this is COVID. So like they had us wear these like not hazmat suits, but it was like these like over layer thing. We had to wear like the really thick mask that like you couldn't really breathe in, that like the
Holy
nurses
shit.
and doctors had to wear, like very tight around your head and everything, and gloves. So we were like as if we were like nurses going in, like with
Yeah.
all this
Holy shit.
stuff. Yeah,
Doesn't Not
so
natural
again,
at all.
yeah, and again we
Mm-mm.
were but I am lucky because some people don't get that
Right.
privilege.
Hmm.
There were, like I said, all those people in
Especially
the
during
ICU that
that
had
time.
COVID. Yeah, at that time, all those people that because like my mom was the only one in there that didn't have COVID. Everyone else had COVID. Luckily, she didn't catch it. So all those families don't get to see their loved ones either, which I think is a horrible thing. But
Yeah, it's so
during
inhumane that,
but I guess during a pandemic, they had to do what they had to do.
yeah.
Um, Anyways, so we got to see her, and again, I just had random thoughts going, and I told myself not to stop thinking random thoughts because like in that moment, I was like, I should think about her in the moment. So I was like, no, I'm just gonna think about what I'm gonna think about. So weird
Mhm.
things came up, things I was thinking, fun things I was thinking. It wasn't anything forced. Yeah, but me and my sister got to hug her, and my sister was, really upset, of course. I mean, no, we were all processing it very differently, of course.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
my partner was there. He didn't get to go in, but he was there, which I was grateful for. Uh, he was outwardly more upset than I was, especially since there's an interesting history with my partner and my family. But I'll just say around July of 2020, they really embraced him with open arms
Mhm.
and let him in the family. And it's just unfortunate that in the next 6 months she had to pass away. And I always thought that was such a sad thing, but I'm grateful that I had that opportunity that my parents were able to kind of bring him in. So that was that. So that was really nice. But
Yeah.
that is kind of it. And again, afterward, my partner was there, and so we actually hung out at his place because I didn't want to go home. I don't know
Mhm.
if you've experienced this, but you don't want to go home when your parent passes away or someone because it just feels like an empty house.
Yeah.
And depending on how of a stronghold they were, the family, like, I'm not gonna say all mothers because not all mothers, but I think a lot of mothers like hold the glue. They're like the powerhouse. They're the ones that kind of hold the family together. Again, it depends on the family, but I think a lot of mothers are like that. And so mine was definitely that. Like we would probably be disconnected without her. And honestly, at first we were. For the first couple months, we kind of just didn't know how to react. So none of us had really experienced it before.
Mhm.
No, none of us. I mean, of course, my dad has lost people, but nothing like this. So, it was new for all of us. So it was a different process. But I think that one thing I will tell people when they're going through grief is allow yourself to think whatever you want to think.
Yeah.
I don't think there's just anything off the table. I don't think there's anything inappropriate. If you're treating other people differently, that's different. But your grief, I mean, is yours. And
Mm.
so if you're angry with them, if you feel guilty, if you're confused, if you're indifferent, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. As long as you're not acting inappropriately or hurting other people or
Mhm.
hurting yourself. But I think that people have the right to feel what they feel. And I think if they don't allow themselves to feel those thoughts, then they may not be able to go through the healing stage.
Hmm.
Stage. But I mean, like, just the whole process is healing.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
so that's what I think. And so even if like I know people that like will say like I'm angry my parent left, and that's how
Yeah.
they deal with it. And so it may not be the most healthy to carry that anger all the time, but I think if that's what's going to help them, and if one
Hmm.
day they can think it differently, where they accept or whatever it is that helps them heal, I think that's what's the most important part. So like, just for people who've never gone through grief, definitely don't tell other people how to grieve if you haven't. And even if you have, you can't. Well, most people who grieve know that it's your process, it's your time, it's what you're thinking. But
Mhm.
I'll know people that kind of share their perspective on grief when they haven't experienced it.
And when they do that, it just comes across like kind of condescending in a way because you're like telling me
Yeah.
how to do it when you haven't even done it. So,
Exactly.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I know it's awkward, but just allow the awkwardness to persist. So what I mean
It's
is,
it.
instead of like
No, yeah, you're right.
like allow things to be awkward, allow things to be quiet, because when you try to fill the void and say something like, "Oh, they're in a better place," that doesn't really help. Like I understand,
You're
I mean,
so
people have good
right.
intentions doing that. I believe they have good intentions doing that because it's a nice thing to say.
yeah.
But in that moment, you don't
Yeah,
want to hear that at all. You don't want to hear that at all in that
exactly.
moment.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
why
And that's the thing, because it's like, I understand why people would say that, like from an outside perspective. It's because it's like you're trying to, like, make it better somewhat. Or like we always as humans are trying to find reason to things, right? So it's just like something really tragic happens, and then other people's response who aren't in it, like you're in it, they're always like, oh, everything happens for a reason, or like you're gonna be so much stronger because of this, stuff like that. And like to the griever, it sounds like so inconsiderate and like
yeah,
just not helpful at all.
Yeah.
And can honestly be like very offensive sometimes. It feels a little invalidating, a lot invalidating. But you're right. I think that people have good intentions when they say it, but it's never a good thing to kind of try and overtake someone's grief. Like if they're vulnerably sharing their grief with you, like it's never a good idea to like kind of hijack the conversation to where you think it should go or to your grief experience. Like always the best thing to do is to just sit and listen and validate, because like any type of reasoning, or like even if you're trying to relate and you like say things maybe like, oh, my dog died, or like I felt grief when I went through my breakup, or stuff like that, like overall like comparison is just not it.
Yeah. And also, like, even though their intentions are good, we always say, like, sometimes intentions are just not enough. And you have to take accountability for the way some things are interpreted to the griever, if that's what,
Hmm.
that's the scenario.
Yeah, totally.
yeah. I think it's important to know these things, but I understand. And so, a lot of people didn't say that at first, but if someone did, I wouldn't be angry. I would just
Right.
brush it off. Like I know some people get really angry with that stuff, but for me, it's like I know where they're coming from. It is very frustrating, but I don't want to cause any more anger than I'm already experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
On the flip end, because this is something that really frustrated me more so than stuff like that, because I understand that, is when people would have to remind me of things that I don't need to hear about. So like yeah, I got really annoyed with this stuff. And some people in my family said this, and that's why probably towards like August to September of 2021, I did not want to see them. I was like, I'm not seeing them. Like my family would want me to go over and see them. I was like, I'm not seeing them. And it's not because I'm mean or I'm mean spirited, but I am creating this boundary where like I need to take care of myself and I can't be around that energy. It took me a while to go back, not too long, probably like 6 months. But even when I went back, I kind of felt it again. I was like, I'm feeling the energy again. I thought it would be different. And so what I mean is they will say stuff like how hard they were having it. They can't comprehend my mom gone. They like it must be so hard for me and my sister because you have to go your whole entire life without her. Newsflash, I know that. You don't have to tell me that. It's really frustrating to hear that because
Yeah, like
it's
thanks
so
for
frustrating because it's
reminding
like
me.
yeah, thanks for reminding me. I know that. I don't need to hear it.
Hmm.
And I don't need
Hmm.
to be reminded that because actually, I'll be honest with you, the most overwhelming thing for me when it comes to my grief is I've been listening to music, whatever I'm doing, and I will remember I'm 24 and I might live till I'm 80 or 90 or 100 or 50. And however long I live, that's still so long without my mom. And so when I feel that, I'm like, I can't think about it. I can't. That's like the
Oh
only thing.
God, yeah.
That's
I
like the only thing
Just
that
completely
you saying
overwhelms me.
that, I'm like,
Yeah,
fuck. I'm literally only 23. And okay, let's see, like the average age is like what, 80 something?
yeah,
And then like, but also like I know I could die at any second. So
right.
like I don't even know. Like it's just why I have to deal with this mortality is just hanging over my head all the time.
Absolutely. So that yeah, that's the one thing that really overwhelms me more than anything else is just that I'm gonna be, especially when I am 48, and that'll be the cutoff where I turn 49, where I'll be like, I've been here longer
Ugh.
than I was with my mom. That's gonna be a really hard
Yeah.
year
I've
It's
for
done
like
me.
those
such a
calculations
shitty
too.
thought. Yeah, like fuck those calculations.
And
Grief
the
math.
calculation of like the age you're gonna be when you've lived longer than her. That's
Hmm.
can't think about that either.
Yeah.
I know that'll be hard.
Another grief math I do is like, so my mom lived till 54.
Mm,
So half of
54.
54 is 27. So like once I turn 27, it's
You've
like
lived half her
I've
life.
already lived half of, like, that's my half life. Like
yeah,
thinking that if I die at the same age my mom did, which, you don't know when you're gonna die, but it's just like that's like the kind of grief math I do in my head a lot because I'm like,
Hmm.
well, when my mom was 27, where was she in her life? Little did she know when she was 27, about to be married and then like whatever, start her life, like that was half her life already gone. Like who would have thought that? Who would have known? Like at
mm,
age 27, like
yeah, oh, man.
that's some spiraling
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
my dad had a video of their wedding, and I hadn't seen it. I didn't know they had a video. No one told me. So we were watching it, and it was nice. It was nice to see my mom younger than me. And then when I saw it, because I think she was 23 there, maybe, or 24, and I was
wow.
like, we're the same age.
Aww.
And it's interesting. Back then people look older. So it's like she does look a little older than me, but she doesn't look 24 there. Not in a bad way, but it looked amazing. A beautiful backyard wedding, and my mom was so funny to see her goofy self and hear her different voice. Because also when she went through thyroid cancer, her voice did change. Her voice was a lot deeper after.
Mhm.
It was like she had more of a high pitched voice, and it was so cool. And I saw like all my family young, and I was like, gosh, these people are
Mhm.
my age. And so I wonder if you
That's
ever think
crazy.
this. I wonder if you ever think this. Like when I saw that, I was like, I wonder, because like when your family's there or when your loved ones are alive, you don't really think about any other life with them. You think the life you have.
Hmm.
But I was like,
Yeah.
what if I was there? Like, would my mom and I be best friends? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
want to like
Yeah.
question funny stuff like that and how fun that would be. So that's just fun stuff I like to think of. But I will say, I think one of the things that's helped me the most is there are some memories that me and my mom have that won't go away. We used to love like sci-fi shows, X-Files, Once Upon a Time, Grimm. We loved like Harry Potter movies. So
I love
I know
them.
some people, yeah, I know some people have like a hard time kind of indulging this stuff and watching it
Hmm.
after their loved one passes away, and that's fine because I can't imagine. But for me, I like watching it because
Hmm.
like I get to kind of re-experience it again, and I kind of have the idea that my mom's always with me, so I was like, oh, let's chill and watch it together. I know it's like a really weird idea, but it kind of helps me. So I do love revisiting all
I
like
like that.
nostalgic moments,
Hmm.
and that helps. And I also well, back then I always thought it was interesting that like chasing nostalgic moments
Mhm.
could like connect you more to your inner child. And I think that we need to be connected to our inner child because so much changes, and I think that your inner child stays the same. and we all have an inner child, and it's not that your inner child can't grow, but it's like that innocent being that,
Mhm.
is curious about everything. And I think that's what we always need to be striving for, is always being curious, always asking questions, all that stuff. And I actually kind of believe in past lives. So I also think that nostalgia kind of can go into your past life if anyone believes that. I don't like I believe this stuff, but
Yeah.
I'm not guaranteed with some of this stuff. I don't know. Like
Mhm.
even the
Right.
Mhm.
afterlife, I'm like, I don't know. And
Mhm.
I will be honest with you, if there was like I mean, there's a lot of evidence, like anecdotal evidence, but like if I had
Yeah.
some sort of indication that there was an afterlife, I would be so okay. I think that's the main thing
Yeah.
is like even like when your parents or your loved one's not here,
Mhm.
that's sad, but like if there's like a guarantee that they're in actually a better place, like a heaven or a safe haven, I would be sad they're not here, but I'd be like so fulfilled. I was like, all
I
right,
know, right?
I have
Yeah.
something to go to when I die now.
I know.
Um
That's why organized religion is so nice because if you believe in heaven, like if you believe that you get to go be with like every one of your family members who passed away when you pass away and like including all your dogs and then you have all your favorite thing, everything happy and good is there in the afterlife. Like you almost look forward to it's like a safe thought passing, right? But if
Yeah.
like you don't believe in that or you are like more skeptical of that, um, yeah, it's really difficult to say the least.
I
yeah,
completely
and
agree. Yeah.
the interesting thing though about that is I think evidence actually shows that people who are religious and people who aren't actually still experience the same severity of emotions when it comes to grief. But I do think religious people have that comfortability though. They may experience the intense emotion still because that's grief,
Of course.
but I still think they may have that comfortability that they have that if you're angry with them, if you feel guilty, if you're confused, if you're indifferent, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. They're safe somewhere.
Yeah.
For people who don't
That's
believe
really
in religion or they
interesting.
have, yeah, I'm not.
Yeah. I
I don't.
completely I believe that because like you said, grief is grief and it's gonna hurt regardless of whether you're religious or not. But I do think
Yeah.
that there those kind of comfort phrases that people tend to say work better, or they might actually end
Right,
up believing
exactly.
that more. Because like some people are like, "Oh, God, you're there with God now," or they're in a better place. And then if you don't believe in
Yeah,
afterlife, you're like, "Where is this better place?" Like,
Yeah,
the
and
better place is here. That's what like
exactly. Well,
I
that's
know
the
for
better
me.
place.
exactly.
Yeah, I think that people who don't believe in the afterlife are going to go, well, what's a better place that's here with us, with our family?
Right.
Exactly. Where she was loved and wanted to be here.
I
Exactly.
also don't think that the afterlife is some place of magical like angels flying around. I think that
Hmm.
I always thought that heaven would be like you're recycled in the universe and you're like in a constant dream maybe, and like you'll be connected to that plane or dream when you're like as energy. I know it's a weird concept, but I do
Not
think
a
that it's
weird
kind of like
concept.
it's kind of like what you make it. So like whatever your deepest desires are, if that's an ocean, if that's a certain home life, that's kind of where you'll go. And I always worry and wonder how much our loved ones grieve us in the afterlife if they are conscious enough to be aware of that. Because sometimes they speak of the afterlife like it's this, you're at like an all-time high of like
Hmm.
consciousness. I'm like, well, does that mean they can't remember or reminisce the loved ones they left
Hmm.
behind? Because I think that they might grieve as well when they're out there in heaven
That's a
too.
really interesting perspective too.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought that. I was like, maybe they do. And I think I shared a post with you I made, which was about I had like this hyper realistic lucid dream of my mom where it was sad, but I knew that she was going to pass away. And we were just kind of waiting for it. And then she was in
Mhm.
her room and she was crying and she told me to hold her. And so I did. And then
Oh.
she told me to kiss her and I did. And then I woke up and I just like basically just like
Oh.
woke up like that. That's like one of the hardest things because like sometimes intrusive thoughts can come in about our loved ones, like
Yep.
ones you don't want to know, one of the ones you don't want to feel because you don't want to feel it at that moment. But dreams you really have
No
no
choice.
control what comes in. And so when that came in, I
Hmm.
was like, huh. I was like in my mind, I was like thinking, that's a sign, and that's a good sign. And I was actually like, I was so peaceful when I woke up, and I was like, it took me like a good 30 minutes to like get over what just happened. Not get
Holy
over, but I
shit.
was like to
Yeah, no,
process
I can
it.
imagine. Yeah, just processing that.
Yeah.
I've had a couple dreams like that, and every time like I text Yako, I'm like, bro, you're not even gonna believe
Yeah.
this dream that I just had.
Yeah.
And then
I've
we just
had like
like
a lot of
discuss it.
dreams like that too. And when I first started like really grieving, I think I had just like this one dream that was kind of similar to yours, where it was like I knew he was going to pass. I've had multiple dreams like that, but this one I think actually he was here and I was like, you're not supposed to be here. And I like said that in the dream.
I had that dream
And
too.
then my friend was like, "Oh yeah, he's better here. Like he's actually fine here or something." And it was just like so weird. It was just a weird dream.
Holy shit.
And so when I was still in a grieving support group, I like asked them, I'm like, have you guys had like these crazy dreams too, where you like feel their presence? It's like not just like a regular dream. Like you may like touch their skin and actually feel their physical skin, or just like it just like feels so real. And it's yeah, like you said, like a lucid dream or like a hyper realistic dream where they are actually here. And like I personally believe too that that is them too. Like that's a message from them directly. I personally believe that. And I feel
I
like
agree.
and the answer from the group was that most of them have also had these dreams. And I feel like
Mm.
it's just a sign. Like you don't ever have these dreams before. And I've heard so many people saying that. So I truly believe that that is like something that occurs after a loss, and it is a sign from our loved one.
I agree, and I know that there's some people that are going to rationalize that and go, "Well, we're told that. We're told that they're actually happier here or they're at a better place." And so we take that pattern and we make it into a dream. I don't believe that, but I've heard people make that rationalization.
Yeah.
No, I really believe that. And I was told this. I told you I did the magazine. And what's cool is I get to interview people on the magazine about people who have very different religious and spiritual beliefs. And so they say that when your loved one does come in your head, when it feels like you're not thinking about them, like sometimes you can think about them, right? But when you're going through your day and they just come in your mind or you have a dream, that's when they're like an angel and they're closest to you, which I think is beautiful. And I think that actually makes a lot of sense because it's like you needed them in that moment. And then there's another instance that was pretty interesting, which was I didn't ask, did I ask God? I asked someone or something for a sign that my mom was okay. And I asked on Sunday, I don't know what it was, but it was Monday because I asked Sunday evening, and my dad told me Monday that he saw my mom. He saw her next to him in a dream or kind of like her shadow, if it was real or not. And he told my sister this on Thursday. And I was like, why did you decide to tell me today then? You know what I mean? Like right
Yeah.
before, the day before I asked for a sign, just really interesting things like that.
Yeah.
And another thing that I think that is interesting for people to explore, if you believe in this stuff, is I talked to a really amazing medium for the magazine one time, and she told me the work that she does. I'm sure you both have heard of mediums, right?
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and so I never heard of a medium, and so it was my first time talking to one, let alone interviewing one. And it was it was really beautiful the work that she does and kind of giving people closure. And I know that for some it's really difficult to go to a medium. I have not because I'm not ready. But I think it's something to explore, when you think you're ready, because it will be really weird. Not again, I say weird not in a bad way, but it will be a different experience, something that I've never experienced, but you know, they
Yeah.
I trust them a lot because like I said, when I interviewed them in August of 2020, that was like one of my favorite interviews. Like after the interview, I was like actually shaking because her and I connected so deeply, even on Zoom, and it was so overwhelming. So I do trust her,
Yeah.
to be able to do that. And she's just a very sweet person. That would be the person I would go to.
Okay.
I think it's really amazing that you have like a medium that, or like a medium that you trust, because I think that is like a huge thing, is that everyone's like really skeptical, and it is a very vulnerable experience, and like you're also in a vulnerable place going to a medium. Like of course they're gonna assume like, oh, you may have lost, like it's like a 50-50 chance, like you either lost a fatherly figure or a motherly figure, so I feel like it's like a lucrative business to scam people because of the vulnerability in the situation. So I feel like it's a reasonable thing to be skeptical. I think that if you know a good medium, or like can find one that you trust or have had people vouch for or something, I think that I would be way more inclined to just do that rather than just like going to a random one that I found on like Craigslist.
Me too, 100%. Actually, something that you said reminded me of Amber from the Grief Gang. She has a episode about her experience going to a medium, and she said that she was really skeptical of it. And in the episode, she talks about how the medium said something like really interesting that she never thought of before, which was that question that you asked Zane a couple minutes ago, which was like, do they miss us on the other side? Like, do they have the capacity to like also miss us? Like, are they on that level of like,
Hmm.
you know, we don't know where they are, or but when if they're even like the same, like, you
Yeah.
know, whatever, everything. But
Yeah.
she said that the medium had said like your mom says she misses you guys.
I have
And Amber
actually.
said she was like, wow, I never thought that she was also missing us too. I was just so focused on us missing her. And I
Mhm.
Yeah.
never even thought that she was missing us too.
Yeah.
I think because like we're told that they enter this sanctuary where they're like at a this bliss and they
Hmm.
reunite with their family and they remember their family, they remember their past, they remember everything about their family, and they're at this eternal bliss, and that you forget that they can experience sadness there too. Why wouldn't they? I don't like that the afterlife can sometimes be painted as this place that's just so perfect because I why
Yeah.
would it be?
And it
You know?
always is. It always is. And that's actually frustrating to me that it's paint. Like when I was growing up, like I found so much comfort in like heaven being like this perfect place where like you never even shed a
Mhm.
tear. And if you
Yeah.
do, it's tears of joy. And like there's absolutely no sadness, no pain. Like it is just this place of like whatever, like this
Like eternal
perfect
bliss.
eternal bliss. And then it's just like when I kind of came down from that after, you know, losing my mom and realizing like, well, wait, how can my mom be in heaven so happily when she just left everyone she's ever loved
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
unfairly and too early, you know? Like it just
Yeah.
makes you
Mhm.
question all those things. And like I'm not saying that I don't believe in heaven because I do, of course,
Mhm.
but me personally, but like it's just different now after asking all those existential questions because you're
Mhm.
right. It's like they do miss us. Okay, so that means they do feel other things other than just joy and peace and love.
Yeah. And
I
I was
think
gonna say earlier is that I've seen a lot of shows and like documentaries about mediumship and like people going to mediums, and
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a few people have that exact telling where people are they're like person is saying that they miss them
Mm-hmm.
or like trying to reach them, you know?
Wow.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a
I think
very
yeah.
it's a very raw thing. I don't know if I'm ready to see one, but I definitely
Yeah.
love that concept, and I think that it's easier for me to believe now that there is more to life than this physical world because of the weird coincidences that I've had, like the weird
Yeah.
things that just feel like direct signs from them, the dreams, all of that. Like it's just easier for me to believe now. Like before, I think
Mm-hmm.
I didn't believe in it at all. Like I was like very skeptical. Now it's like I definitely believe in that, and it gives me some level of comfort. I mean, not all
Mhm.
the time,
Right.
but you know,
Right, right.
it offers me some kind of like blanket to fall back on.
Totally.
Yeah, I wrote a poem about the afterlife when I thought it was. And I think that there's like a process you go through before you actually enter it. And that's something you have to experience on your own,
Mm,
maybe with the help of God or whatever's out there. But you go through it and like you're kind of walking by yourself until you reach this moment where you reflect on everything. And I think that if you're going to enter this higher conscious plane, I think that you would actually be more hyper emotional. And, you
mhm.
know, since you're at this, I think that you can experience peace and be sad. I don't think that
True.
peace is happiness. I think that peace is like this mindset that even if you're sad, that you're still at peace with yourself and you're grounding yourself in your beliefs. But I think that they may be at an eternal peace. That doesn't mean they can't grieve. Doesn't mean they can't be sad.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so
like that
that's
Damn,
concept.
that was the best thing I've heard in a long time.
oh, thank you.
That is so fucking true. I feel like I wish more people understood that.
Well, I think the thing with peace or positivity or whatever it is when you're at a mindset of peace, you still embrace the sadness because you know it's there,
Hmm.
but you know it's there, and so you're peaceful. And so, like, I think like and this is what's interesting. It's like some of the most positive people I know have gone through some of the hardest things
Mm-hmm.
because they appreciate life and they've reached this level of peace where they can keep moving forward. But it's hard. And it's not a linear direction again, especially when it comes to mental health and grief and whatever. And so I think having that peace and being grounded in your thoughts, even if it's sad, just allow yourself to feel that way, but
Yeah.
still be grounded in who you are. And I will say, what's interesting too is, I feel like before, like when my mom was around, like I wanted to do things for her, but mostly I wanted to make myself happy, make myself successful for me, and
Hmm.
of course make my family happy. But now it goes beyond that. It goes beyond
Mhm.
I want people to like vicariously experience her through me, and I have to continue the legacy now.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
there could be a lot of pressure doing that, but
It is.
my
Yeah,
mom
for
raised me well
sure.
to do that. My mom raised me well to do that.
Hmm.
This is the hardest thing too, is not hearing their voice again,
Oh,
or not feeling them again. And the saddest thing is, I got to do a lot of things. Like in November, I found out that I got an internship at General Motors, and my mom was super excited. And it's just kind of sad that she didn't get to see me do it. And I remember like halfway through the internship, my supervisor emailed me just saying she was super proud of the work I was doing. Like she's like, everyone here is really impressed with what you were doing. And that actually got me really depressed. I wasn't happy about it.
mhm.
Like I
Hmm.
was proud of the work I was doing, but I got depressed because like it's nice they're proud, but I wanted my mom to be proud the most.
Yeah, totally.
And a lot of other cool things I got to do is I got to intern at NASA and I got to go to the White House and I actually
Hmm.
met President Biden talking about mental health. Mom was always into aliens. Mom was always into UFOs. She loved Ancient Aliens, X-Files. We all loved that. Um, and it's just like she didn't get to see those things that I'm sure she would have like loved so much. And I hate that I don't get to hear her voice again.
Yeah.
Especially also, I know I'm going on like around a lot, but just these are my thoughts, especially when you hold certain bonds with your parent that you don't hold with anyone else.
Yeah.
Like I'll watch X-Files and like my family's just not really into it. Or like
Mm.
I'll watch these shows, they're not really into it. I'll talk about ancient aliens, they're not into it. And I'm just like,
Hmm.
even songs I'll
And
play
that's my
from different,
mom. Hmm.
yeah, and even from songs I'll play from different movies, they're like, I don't know these songs. I'm like, well, for one, we've seen these movies like 20 times. And I'm like, I wish you would know it. And then two, it's just kind of sad that you have this unique bond with your
Yeah.
parent or whatever, whoever passed, and like you don't have it with anyone else, and you share those moments that you
Yeah.
kind of have to share in isolation, kind of by yourself,
Yeah.
because
Share it by yourself. Yeah.
it's kind of sad. I mean, like you say, you can
So
imagine that they're
sad.
there, use imagination that they're with you, but it's still not the same as if they were physically
No.
there.
Hmm.
So I know we went on a
Yeah,
lot.
didn't you mention that you use your imagination a lot to like try and I guess connect with her and also maybe like communicate with her?
Yeah. I'm not at that place where I can kind of just go to my mom's urns and talk to her. I know some people can do that. I'm not
Right.
there yet. I don't know if I will be, but like I said, I use imagination to try to create adventures that my mom and I can experience. I remember listening to like a Harry Potter song, and like it was like the moment I get to the afterlife, and it's like a place where you can manifest anything. And so she's like, "What do you want to do first?" And I was like, And so she brings out a broomstick and we play Quidditch. I know it's so dorky.
That's incredible.
That's
then
really
I,
funny.
then I was like, "Oh, mom, you know me too well." And then we play match of Quidditch. It's like fun stuff like that.
That's really funny.
Yeah, and then like there's another moment, not funny like that, but there's a moment where like I'm walking by myself. Like I told you, there's a personal journey you go on. Then I walk, and then I see my mom and my family sitting there at a picnic. They're like, "Oh, we've been waiting for you," and there's stuff like that. And
Yeah, yeah.
now I used to daydream a lot about like my favorite game series is Kingdom Hearts, and I'm always like imagining I'm in that universe.
Hmm.
Now, like a lot of my daydreams are me about just saving her. Like she's like the most powerful
Mm,
being and she's taken by darkness. I'm like, I'm gonna save her with my powers. It's so ridiculous, but it helps me like stay connected and like I'm
yeah.
saving
When do
her.
you
And
do these things? Like, is this like daydream or is it just like night, close your eyes? Like,
no, it's definitely like daydream with music. Like I definitely have to have music
yeah.
to come up with
Music is so
these.
powerful.
That's really
It
beautiful. That's
is.
just like a really powerful meditation almost.
Yeah.
And you just kind of like go into a different realm and like that's really interesting and like I don't hear that often if ever. So I think that's a really amazing concept.
And it's hard for me to do it by myself like at home. I have to be either walking or like in the back of a car.
Yeah,
Or I
yeah.
mean, sometimes I'll be in the bathroom. I'm listening to music, and this is like a weird thing I'm gonna share, probably TMI, but like I love the bathroom. something about like the fan can feel really like that white noise, and then like I'm literally by
Mm-hmm.
myself. I'm like, don't bother me. I'm like kind of
Yeah.
in this Zen moment. I know it's like the weirdest place, like the bathroom, but sometimes I'll be in there for. Sometimes I will literally be in there like for
Yeah.
hours. It's kind of weird, but it
Everybody
that's where
has
I'll
their place, you know.
yeah, that's where I'll daydream sometimes too. Because like
Yeah.
when I'm in my room, I'm like kind of distracted with everything.
Right.
But
There's
like when
so
I'm there, I
many
just have my
distractions.
phone. Yeah. So that is kind of like what I do to like kind of keep her alive and create new memories.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since someone told me that I thought was interesting is every single time we think of a memory, it's always different, and I didn't know that. So
Yeah.
like if you think of a memory with your parent, you have to make up stuff. You have to make up what you're feeling because
Right.
every single time you have a memory, it's always different. And so they say that what you're saying is valid because you have to use imagination to come up with those memories again, anyways, because you don't know what they were really like the very first time you felt them. So you're always using imagination. I think we kind of downgrade the power of imagination and
Yeah, we
what
totally
it
do.
can do.
You're really making me realize that we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Like
incredible.
I'm sad we all never learned
But
the
honestly,
SpongeBob episode where the
oh, I
imagination episode.
imagine. Yeah, I'm a huge SpongeBob fan, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And also, like, people don't call it necessarily imagination, but people say all the time, like, imagine. Oh, I guess they say imagine, but they're like, just think about what they would say, or like
Yeah.
imagine what they would do or say in the situation when like
Yeah, you're
in
actually
times
right.
in times where we're like needing some guidance from
You're
them.
actually right.
That's like
I didn't
usually
even
what
think
we're
about that.
and it's like that's like
That's true.
exactly what you're doing, but just like why not take it one step further and imagine that you can do these like amazing things. And I think
Hmm.
that in another world or in this world, but somewhere else in this world, you're doing those things. And
Mhm.
Hmm. Oh my
you know,
gosh, that's actually so amazing because I just realized that I did that this weekend and I didn't even know it.
what did you
Oh.
Like
do?
this weekend was my mom's birthday
Mm.
and I went to a little like nature reserve and wrote her a note for her birthday and stuff. And I just like sat there with the photo of her that I have in my purse and like just wrote her a little birthday card basically. And I told her um and I said in the letter that I think in a different universe, we'd probably still be at this very nature preserve doing a little walk and like a little adventure because like that's who she was. Like that's why I went to this nature preserve because it was like this is what mom would do if we were here.
Oh,
Because we were at like I mentioned last week, we were at a wedding, we were at like her family's event. So
mm,
she would have been there and we maybe
Mm.
even would have been on that very same nature preserve doing a little walk down the trail and all
Mm.
talking and giggling and stuff like as usual. And like I said that to her in the note that I wrote for her there. I'm like, honestly, like we'd probably still be sitting right here all together.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
like and I imagined it, like I did visualize us all being there because I think it was a real possibility that if she was still here, like she would have found the one nature preserve in the area that we were and just like when, exploring in it because that's just who she
Yeah.
was. She wanted to explore and also get her steps in.
Oh, that's really sweet.
Yeah, I'm glad you
Yeah.
did that
Yeah, that's
on her
amazing.
for her
You really just
birthday.
made me realize that. That's so beautiful.
Yeah, I feel like we do it like unconsciously or on
Mhm.
like a smaller scale, but like harnessing that energy can be really healing, and I can totally see
Hmm.
how that can bring you another sense of comfort as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Um, yeah, and then one thing I'm thinking of now is, I remember how I mentioned at the beginning the inner child. I don't think that means you can't change. Just the reminder. Because like one of the things I've noticed is when someone goes through something traumatic, a whole new transformation, people always say we want the old you.
Ugh.
They don't live
Mm,
anymore. That doesn't exist anymore. And the
yeah.
people that are saying that, you kind of have to realize that it's okay that they're not the same anymore. They'll never be the
Yeah.
same. And I don't think it's right to go back to this old version of yourself when how could you when
When
the
your
old
life has
version of
literally
you.
changed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. It's not fair to ask yourself of
no.
that.
And I remember having a conversation. There was a class I took actually, and we went on a whole thing of grief. And the reason why grief is powerful is nothing to do with us loving them or being connected to them. Well, being connected, yes, but not even just loving them,
Uh-huh.
because they said that grief is really just attached to our identity and how we see ourselves. So that's why we'll grieve people we don't know, because they actually shaped our identity in a certain way. It's not
Hmm.
that we love them. It's
Wow.
not that we love them. It's that we're attached to them in a certain way. Like let's say you like a certain
True.
actress. You like a certain actress, and they pass away, and you're like, well, that actress actually shaped my identity in a certain way, gave me
Mhm.
confidence to pursue acting or whatever it is.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, you grieve them, not because you love them, but because you have this attachment. So I thought that was really interesting. So again, if you lose someone, yes, like your identity is totally changed and it's shaped differently now. And again, there's nothing wrong with you identifying a new way. There's nothing wrong with you having a new outlook on life, because you're going to. Like, how could you not? Especially with someone you're really close to.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So I just want to say that, because I hear that they want people to return to their old selves, but that's just, and it's not fair for the person
Mhm.
that has to hear
Mm-mm.
that, because they won't get to that place probably. And I think that's kind of traumatic, to try and be like
Yeah.
your
Oh
old
my God.
self
Yeah.
when part of your old self is gone, because
Yeah.
I think that your
Yeah.
old
Like
self
Yeah,
she's
that's like
just
has,
another
dead.
level
Like
of
she's
pressure.
gone.
it's like the person who passed away kind of took that piece with them, and not in a
True.
bad way. But I
True.
feel like, when your loved one passes away, your old self kind of goes with them. And you're this kind of new transformed self, and it doesn't have to be good or
Mhm.
bad, it just could be just a new self. That's kind of how I see it. And another thing that we talked about, I'm curious what you all think about this, because I don't like it. There is actually like a sickness or a disorder or condition that they're saying, like prolonged griefness is an actual condition,
Oh
or
Mhm.
they're
yeah,
trying
Mhm.
to make it a condition.
it's in the DSM
I
5.
think yeah, they made it like a condition, a prolonged grief disorder.
I don't know. I think that's a little ridiculous, because to me, I do think that grief is forever. I don't think it's a process. I don't think it's one process and it's over. You don't come out of it. It's something you will always experience. That's just how
I
I
Mhm.
feel.
agree.
No, you're definitely right. I forget what episode we talked a little bit about this on, but yeah, the prolonged grief disorder, I think they put it in there for purposes of I think it says 6 months or something. Like if you're
Gosh, come on.
like debilitated from your grief for like 6 months or longer, like you have prolonged grief disorder.
Mhm.
And like I was listening to a lot of things. Megan Devine has a good podcast episode about it. Because there's like pros and cons to it. But I mean, like legit, like logically, um, no, like it's bullshit. Like it
I
shouldn't be a disorder. This is like
No.
just human experience, This is not like something's chemically wrong with my brain. Like no, nothing's chemically wrong with my brain. Like this is like normal. And I think that's the frustrating part of like that being in the, official
Yeah.
diagnosing
Yeah.
guidebook, but like I think the pro argument was that people can be
It can be taken
people
seriously.
who are
Yeah.
struggling,
That's true.
yeah, they can use their, yeah, it could like actually be diagnosed with something that their insurance can cover, and that is like seemed as more legit, right? But that like is like the very reason why this is all fucked up, because like grief in this world, which we're actively trying to fight against with this podcast, grief in this world is just not accepted as like it's not accepted. It's not accepted as legit. It's not accepted as like a good reason for anything
Mhm.
other than, oh, do you need 2 days off?
Oh
Like,
my gosh, I
and
saw
that's
that.
like the fucked up thing.
Yeah.
I see posts like that where someone, like a boss or a company, gets someone like a couple of days off, and it's like, when they need more time, and 2 days is not enough for them to actually figure out all the logistics that they have to do. If they have to plan the funeral, tell
No, no.
people, or plan the service, whatever it is. Like, I wrote an article on Entrepreneur about, how to actually embrace grief in the workplace. I know that's sensitive. Like, not everyone wants to talk about grief. Like, some people are like, I don't
Yeah.
want to talk about grief. I want to move on. That's their journey, and I don't want to take that away from them.
Yeah.
But I
Mhm.
think that I wish we had more of an encompassing culture around grief, where you even maybe have a grief chat in the workplace, especially since people massively passed away during COVID, and people were experiencing
Yeah,
grief
totally.
unlike any other. So I really hope the workplace can embrace more of that wellness in grief.
Yeah.
Me too.
And I will share, because I didn't get to share this. We did have my mom's celebration. We had
Hmm.
it in April, so it was actually pretty recent, because again, it was during COVID. And there was a lot of different things going on, as you can imagine. When you plan a service or a celebration, there's a lot to it, and it can get
Yeah.
personal. And There's always drama, just always to kind of expect it. But it was a nice event though. It was a good reflection of her, and I was happy to do it. I know some people didn't get to during COVID, and it's sad that some people didn't do a service and they just still haven't done it yet. And they may not
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. We really appreciate you going into detail, and I just
was
loved talking
incredible.
about the afterlife and like spirituality and all of that, because it is something that I always think about, and I just love to hear different perspectives.
I feel like my mind is expanded after this conversation.
Just moving on to the final question we always like to ask is if there's anything you want to share about your mom, you know, any anecdotes, or if you want to just tell us like whatever you want
What she was like.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
We know she like
That's hard in a
X-Files
nutshell.
and
I know, and like we know that it's like hard to just summarize a whole being in like in any kind of way. Like nothing can ever encompass all of who she was, but whatever you want to share, we're here to listen to.
Okay. I mean, I don't have to say anything because you already experienced her. No, I'm just kidding.
We really did.
No, just kidding. What I will say is my mom had a friend who they worked together with. And what's interesting was at my mom's friend's mom's funeral, my mom shared that no matter where you were, no matter who you were talking to, when you were talking to that one person, she lit the room. And she focused on you. There could be a million things going on. There could be a fire. And she would focus on you. You were the only important person in the room because who she was talking to was important. And that's it. And so it was just so interesting for my mom to share that. And then when my mom passed away, I was like, you were exactly like that. And so I gave her eulogy and I mentioned that she lit up the room. Like she literally could say something positive to anyone, like about anything. And I think we live in a world where for some reason we are scared to give compliments. We're scared to be nice to people. Not the nice people, but I think we're scared to give people compliments. My mom always gave compliments. If it was their smile, if it was their hair, their clothes, whatever it was, she always was so sweet. She always called everyone sweetie, cutie pie. I wish I could, but I think that might be weird coming from a younger guy than like a sweet older lady.
Sweet mom,
But that was she called everyone that, and I was always like, I wish I could call people that because it's so sweet.
Yeah.
So that was that. So in a nutshell, she just made you feel like the most important person and really lit up the room. And that's something we don't get to see a lot in a world that is kind of dark sometimes, you know?
Yeah, especially nowadays.
Oh, what a caring, beautiful soul. She sounds really incredible. Thank you for sharing her with us. We really appreciate it. And thank you for sharing you with us.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, again, thank you so much for having me. When I first discovered this was like a podcast about grief, I'm totally interested.
Yay. We're really glad that you found us and that we found you too. And yeah, I'm glad that Grief Uncensored was able to be a resource for you, and then you've come full circle and now you're sharing on it too. So that's just really amazing.
Yeah, well, thank you both again.
All right, well, thank you so much for being on. We so appreciate your time once again. And yeah, for the viewers, we'll see you guys next week. Bye.